the concept of taking a picture of someone's art and putting on a blog, like that's so natural.
But knowing the artist is an offline experience, by the way.
Right,
you do not know anybody if you have a virtual relationship with them. You only know. Tonight, I bet 3 people will come up to us and say, I'm that person, I did this, because when we do an outside event, usually somebody will say, hey, you know that post that you put up a couple of weeks ago, I'm that person. And then the relationship takes off because now we know the person, we've had a beer with them, and we have now a relationship. That does not happen online. That can't happen digitally.
But I think where you're almost heading is to the conversation about how the internet started to fuel the movement and the role the site played, because what started to happen is people around the world started to go to the site, and they would see a piece and say, "What? They did that in London? Like we can do bigger, we can do better."
But it's even different. It's even more than that, because you have regional. So in the beginning, it was like pockets, right? So it started in New York, and we did a lot of New York blogging. So it was Fail and Swoon and artists, and then all of a sudden we go outwards, and then you would have a situation where the first time we would ever put up a photograph from Russia, right? So the first Russian photograph, that Russian artist emails 80,000 Russian artists, that's an exaggeration, but you know what I mean, saying, hey, my post, and then we have all this stuff from Russia. So the challenge with the blog, and what kills us, and what I'm always upset by, is that there are certain cultures that are not comfortable in speaking English. So the reason why we have a lot of Italian artists on the website and a lot of other stuff, because they'll write an email saying, this is what I did last night or whatever. We love what we see in Tokyo and in Japan. We will never get a lot of street art from Japan because there's a nervousness of trying to write in
like
English,
language barrier.
And so it's tricky. We have artists that are European that go to Japan and put their own up in Tokyo, but a lot of Japanese artists, it bothers me that we're not celebrating that scene, because when we do, it's when somebody is completely bilingual and traveling the world, and not just the kid who's in Kyoto who put up a piece because he wanted to. He's not going to, or she's not going to email us saying, I did this, because they're just not comfortable in English.
I mean, Google Translate's getting better.
But that's the intake. So I wish that somebody did that so we could do Google Translate.
I would say, too, for juxtapose, street art, I mean, amongst all, I mean, we grew up in, the magazine was started in the roots of more tattoo, car culture, pop surrealism, comic books, even graffiti to a certain extent, but street art really helped us grow to a more European audience and a more South American audience. I mean, I think all of us on the staff would say that. And I think that we credit street art for a lot of our distribution of the magazine in international locations. But can you remember, for you guys, like the first time you started noticing that there was this international community paying attention to something that you guys maybe were paying attention to on like your 4-block radius?
Yeah, Ryanair. It was cheap air flights to be able to travel to go to jams. It wasn't internet. The internet, you can share things to get excited and put up stuff in your own city. But it only became a global movement when in Europe you can get on a plane for less than what it would cost to have lunch and go to a Finders Keeper event or go to an event, and then the artists would meet the internet is only a conduit of what happens offline. The Wooster site is a bad Xerox of outdoors. You know, we shouldn't be seeing street art online. What happens is it's just a calling card to meet offline, and that's the beauty of it.
I agree with you, but I would also say that most people view street art online, right? Especially, like, I mean, I spend a lot of time, if I see something in Spain, I'm never going to make it to the south of Spain and see Asif's new piece. There's certain artists I'll never see. So I think what is very interesting, I think, about street art is that it has this life that exists that is not physical.
Well, it has to also because the art is temporary in so many cases.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So the digital image is critical to the fact that it existed.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it cuts both ways, because the beauty of street art is that you're giving up you're giving up. It's the act of creating art that you're drawn by, and not the act of possessing the art. So the photograph is an act of documentation that you have to ease into. I remember, again, going back to Swoon, Sarah and I remember distinctly after some event, we were at a bar, and Sarah and I, we were having a glass of wine, and we're like, why are you not photographing your work? Like, why are you not taking any photographs? And she's like, I have no interest in doing that. For me, it's about making art, putting up, and I'm giving it up, and whatever.
It's the process.
It's the process. And it took her years to realize that documentation is important. But we also love the people that's like, I'm putting up and I'm not going to document it at all, because that goes against, I mean, the purist that goes against the art form. Mm-hmm. It's like, I did it to make it, not I did it to save it.
But I want to add one thing about what Swoon said that night, because she also said that one time she put up a piece and it was still wet, and she came back like a half hour later and someone had ripped off every little piece, and it was just a pile of wet paper on the ground. And she was totally fine with it.
Well, she put it back up. She actually just slapped it back up and said, okay, that's what it's supposed to be.
But like, that was the nature of it.
She didn't have a website. I mean, Swoon never had a website until she was probably in the Brooklyn Museum. I mean, that might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but not a big one. I mean, she didn't.
Yeah,
that's not how she
fairly new.
She doesn't think about that. She doesn't. That's not how she operates.